In the dense jungles of Luzon, a weary American platoon was about to face their deadliest challenge yet. A routine advance through Philippine territory turned deadly when an unseen enemy sniper began systematically eliminating soldiers with terrifying precision. Sergeant James "Red" McCallister wasn't your typical frontline grunt. For 8 years in the Pacific Theater, he was an elite tracker and veteran scout, known for reading terrain that others found impenetrable. When the phantom sniper struck from constantly shifting positions, they had no idea they were facing a man who understood their game. McCallister launched a solo hunting mission that would trigger a confrontation between military duty and human compassion. What began as a desperate hunt for a ghost-like enemy would become a profound moral reckoning. The battle-hardened platoon would never be the same after discovering that their phantom wasn't just a deadly sniper, but a father protecting his only daughter in the chaos of war. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The jungle breathed around them, its hot, wet air pressing in with each exhalation. Sergeant James "Red" McCallister felt the weight of it in his lungs as he lay motionless beneath a canopy of broad-leafed plants. A rivulet of sweat traced the line of his jaw, catching in the rough stubble of his beard before dropping silently to the damp earth. 20 yards ahead, where the path narrowed between two fallen trunks, he could still see Private Donovan's body sprawled in the mud, one arm outstretched as if reaching for help that never came. The shot that killed him had made barely a sound, just a soft whisper that preceded the dull thud of the bullet finding flesh. No one had seen where it came from. No one ever did. "Red." The voice in his ear was barely audible. Corporal Elliot Tex Garrison lay beside him, his lean frame coiled with tension, eyes scanning the wall of green before them. Unlike most of the platoon, whose fear hung around them like a visible cloud, Tex maintained a dangerous calm, the kind that came from knowing exactly how tenuous their situation had become. "That makes 5 in 3 days, Tex whispered. Red nodded slightly, careful not to disturb the foliage above him. "Same pattern, clean shot, no sound, no muzzle flash." "It ain't natural." Tex's Texas drawl thickened with unease. "He's like a damn ghost." Red's eyes narrowed as he studied the jungle ahead, seeing not just the tangle of vegetation but reading the land itself. 8 years in the Pacific had taught him to see what others missed. The faint impressions of passage, the subtle shifts in the natural order that betrayed human presence. "He's flesh and blood," Red murmured, "and he bleeds like anyone." "If you say so." Tex adjusted his rifle slightly. "But I'm starting to think the men are right. The Japs captured in the northern sector, they're calling him the Phantom." Red had heard the whispers. They'd been pinned in this patch of Luzon's jungle for nearly a week, their advance halted by an enemy they couldn't see. Every attempt to move forward had been met with precise, devastating fire. Always a single shot, always fatal. Their unseen hunters seemed to anticipate their every move, disappearing like mist whenever they attempted to locate his position. "We need to fall back," Red said finally. "Regroup at the ravine." Tex's expression darkened. "Lieutenant won't like that. Lieutenant Caldwell can take it up with Donovan's corpse if he's got complaints." With practiced signals, Red began organizing their retreat. Men moved in coordinated pairs, covering each other's movement while Red kept his eyes trained on the jungle, searching for any flicker of movement, any hint of their stalker. They'd made it halfway back to their makeshift camp when Lieutenant Marcus Caldwell intercepted them, his once pristine uniform now as mud-caked as the rest. "Sergeant McCallister," he snapped, voice tight with barely contained frustration. "I don't recall ordering a retreat." Red met the young officer's gaze steadily. "Donovan's dead, sir. Same shooter. We were exposed on that ridge." Caldwell's jaw tightened. At 25, he was younger than most of the men he commanded, his commission fresh from officer school. The past week had etched lines around his eyes that hadn't been there before. "That's exactly why we need to push forward, not back," Caldwell insisted. "This sniper has us dancing to his tune. We need to break through, establish a new perimeter." Red felt the eyes of the men on him. Their trust in Caldwell had been eroding with each lost comrade. They looked to Red now, the veteran, the tracker, the man who'd brought them through Guadalcanal and Leyte. "With respect, sir," Red said quietly. "A frontal push would be suicide. This isn't some random defensive position. This sniper is different." Caldwell stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Different how, Sergeant? He's one man with a rifle." "No, sir." Red shook his head slowly. "One man doesn't control this much territory. One man doesn't anticipate every move we make. There's something else going on here." The lieutenant's face flushed. "We have orders to secure this sector by the end of the week. Command won't accept excuses about one Japanese sniper holding up an entire platoon." "Then give me time to track him properly," Red countered. "Let me find his pattern, his hideout." "We don't have time." The crack of a rifle shot cut through their argument. 20 yards away, Private Jenkins collapsed, blood blossoming across his chest. "Get down," Red shouted, but the men were already dropping, pressing themselves into the earth as if they could disappear into it. Caldwell's face had gone pale. Another man dead under his command, right in the middle of their supposedly secure position. The shot had come from a completely different direction than the previous attacks. Impossible if they were dealing with just one sniper. 2 hours, Caldwell said finally, his voice hollow. "You have 2 hours to form a tracking plan. After that we move forward with or without your ghost." As the lieutenant retreated, Tex crawled to Red's position, his expression grim. "Did you see where that shot came from?" Red asked. Tex shook his head. "Northeast. But that can't be right. The last one came from the west. No way he could have repositioned that fast." Red's eyes scanned the jungle canopy. Something wasn't adding up. "Have the men secure the perimeter. Double the watch. I need to check something." While the others dug in, Red slipped away, moving through the jungle with the silent precision that had earned him his reputation. He retraced their path, circling wide around where Donovan had fallen. The jungle floor told its stories to those who knew how to read it. Here, the subtle compression of earth beneath a boot. There, the faint disturbance of undergrowth. What he found near the ridge stopped him cold. Crouching low, he examined a perfect boot print in the soft earth. Too perfect, pressed deliberately into the mud. Nearby, a broken twig had been carefully placed to catch the light. To an amateur, they would seem like careless mistakes, signs of hasty passage. Red knew better. These were deliberate markers, set to draw them in a specific direction. They were being played. An hour later, Red rejoined the platoon. The men had established a defensive circle, but fear had settled over them like a fog. Every shadow, every rustle of leaves was now a potential threat. Caldwell was hunched over a map, his fingers drumming restlessly against his thigh. "Well?" the lieutenant demanded as Red approached. "It's a trap," Red said simply. "The tracks, the sight lines, they're designed to funnel us into killing zones. He's anticipating our movements by controlling them." Caldwell's expression hardened. "How can one sniper cover that much ground?" "That's just it," Red said. "I don't think it's just one person. The timing between shots, the positioning, it doesn't add up." "So what are you saying? That we're up against an entire Japanese squadron?" "No." Red shook his head. "The shots are too consistent, same weapon, same precision. But there's someone else out there working with the sniper, someone helping coordinate, maybe spotting for him." Tex joined them, his rifle resting across his shoulders. "You're saying our ghost has a partner?" "At minimum," Red confirmed. "And they're not just shooting at targets of opportunity. They're creating a psychology, fear, confusion, making us think we're being hunted from all sides. Because we damn well are," Tex muttered. Caldwell stared at the map before him, the weight of command visible in the slump of his shoulders. "So what's your recommendation, Sergeant?" "Let me hunt him," Red said. "Alone. One scout, moving silent. Find their hideout, their supply cache. They can't be living off the land entirely, not with this level of coordination. And if you're wrong, if you walk right into his sights," Red's face was impassive, "then you'll be short one scout, and you can proceed with your frontal assault." But I'm not wrong. Caldwell considered for a long moment, the sounds of the jungle, filling the silence between them. Finally, he gave a curt nod. You have until dawn tomorrow. Find this phantom or his helper. After that, we move forward. All of us. As Red prepared his gear, Tex approached, his expression troubled. You know what you're walking into, right? He asked quietly. Red checked his sidearm, tucking extra ammunition into his pockets. I know he's good. Better than good, but everyone makes mistakes. Unless they don't, Tex replied. These past 3 days, it's like he's toying with us, Red. Like a cat with a mouse. He could have wiped us out by now if he wanted to. Red paused, considering Tex's words. Maybe that's the key. Maybe it's not about killing all of us. Then what's it about? Control, Red said softly. He's controlling the battlefield, conserving ammunition, picking his shots carefully. That doesn't sound like the Japanese we've fought before. No, Red agreed. It doesn't. As dusk fell, Red slipped away from the perimeter. The jungle grew darker around him, but his eyes had long since adjusted to its shadows. He moved without sound, each step carefully placed, his senses tuned to the subtle language of the forest. Behind him, the platoon huddled in their makeshift fortifications. Ahead lay the unknown. And somewhere in the gathering darkness, a hunter who had turned the tables, making predators into prey. Red's face set in grim determination. By dawn, one way or another, he would find the ghost who haunted these mists. The darkness enveloped Red like a second skin as he crouched in the undergrowth, listening to the night sounds of the jungle. He'd been motionless for nearly 40 minutes, letting the forest forget his presence. Every rustle, every call of a night bird registered in his consciousness, building a map of normalcy against which any disruption would stand out. All clear. Tex's whisper was barely audible as he materialized from the shadows, followed by Privates Martinez and Cooper, the 3 men Red had selected for the recon mission. Red gave a single nod. Move in pairs. No talking unless necessary. He gestured toward a narrow game trail barely visible in the filtered moonlight. We follow the ridgeline east. Stay 5 yards apart. They moved deeper into the jungle, leaving the relative safety of their platoon's position behind. Red led, his eyes constantly scanning for the telltale signs of human passage, broken twigs, disturbed earth, the subtle wrongness that betrayed a man's attempt to hide his trail. 3 hours into their trek, the first hints of dawn bleeding through the canopy, Red raised his closed fist, the signal to halt. Ahead, a small clearing opened between the trees, and there, caught in the early light, was the dull gleam of brass. Red approached cautiously, Tex covering him from behind a thick trunk. Kneeling, Red examined the spent shell casings scattered. On the ground, Arisaka rifle, standard Japanese military issue. They were clean, barely weathered by the elements. Recent, he murmured as Tex joined him. How recent? Tex eyed the surrounding jungle nervously. Day, maybe 2. Red studied the position. From here, a shooter would have had a clear line of sight down to the valley where their platoon had taken casualties 3 days prior. But something was wrong. The angle's off. Tex frowned. What do you mean? Jenkins was hit from a completely different direction. Red pointed toward the northeast. Unless our ghost can be in 2 places at once. They spent the next hour searching the area, finding 3 more shooting positions, each with a perfect firing line to different sections of the American-held territory, each with the same meticulous organization. Shell casings collected neatly. Minimal disturbance to the surroundings. No cigarette butts, no food wrappers, none of the usual detritus soldiers left behind. This ain't right, Tex muttered, examining a cleverly constructed blind made of woven palm fronds. No one's this clean, this disciplined. Red said nothing, but unease prickled along his spine. The sniper wasn't just good. He was methodical, patient, a professional who left nothing to chance. But something else nagged at him. The shooting. Positions seemed designed not just for tactical advantage but for easy escape. Always near natural pathways through the undergrowth, always with at least 2 directions to disappear. Let's keep moving, Red said finally. There's something else out here. By mid-morning, they'd pushed nearly a mile beyond where any American patrol had ventured. The jungle grew thicker, the air heavier with moisture and the sweet rot smell of decaying vegetation. Martinez and Cooper moved with increasing nervousness, jumping at the sounds of the forest. They almost missed the cache. It was Red who spotted the subtle inconsistency in the pattern of vines draped over a hollow in a massive banyan tree. Pulling back the natural curtain revealed a small storage space. Japanese military rations, 2 canteens, a medical kit, and a cleaning rod for a rifle. Son of a bitch, Tex breathed. They've got supply points set up throughout the jungle. Red examined the rations, enough for a few days, carefully portioned. He's not living off the land, he's prepared, established. Could be part of a larger unit, Martinez suggested, but Red shook his head. No. Look at how it's organized. 1 person's supplies, maybe 2. No signs of a group. Cooper, who'd been keeping watch, suddenly tensed. Sarge, he whispered urgently. Movement 3 o'clock. Red turned slowly, following Cooper's gaze into the dense undergrowth. For a moment he saw nothing. Then, a flash of movement, gone almost before it registered. Small, quick, low to the ground. Animal? Tex suggested, but his voice lacked conviction. Maybe. Red wasn't convinced either. Whatever it was moved with purpose, with awareness. Spread out. Cooper, Martinez, circle left. Tex and I will go right. Quiet and slow. They tracked the disturbance through the jungle for nearly half an hour, finding only brief signs of passage. A freshly broken stem here. Displaced leaf litter there. Then abruptly the trail vanished at the edge of a rocky stream. Clever, Red muttered. Use the water to hide the trail. Tex spat into the underbrush. Too clever for an animal. Red crouched, studying the last clear sign, a partial footprint, pressed into a patch of mud. Too small for a man. A child, perhaps? But what would a child be doing alone in this war-torn jungle? We keep moving, he decided. But stay alert. Whatever it was, they're watching us now. The day stretched on, the oppressive heat of the jungle seeming to intensify with each passing hour. They found 2 more ammunition caches and another shooting blind, each one reinforcing Red's growing certainty that they were dealing with an extraordinarily organized enemy. Late in the afternoon, they stumbled upon something unexpected, signs of a brief firefight. Bullet holes riddled a clump of trees, and dark stains that could only be blood marked the ground. Japanese patrol, Red concluded, examining cartridge casings from both American and Japanese weapons. Ran into one of our advance units. Cooper knelt beside a splash of blood. Looks like they dragged a wounded man that way. They followed the blood trail cautiously. It led to a shallow cave formed by an overhanging rock, and there, slumped against the stone, was a Japanese soldier. His breathing came in labored gasps, his uniform dark with blood from a chest wound. He couldn't have been more than 20. The soldier's eyes widened in fear as the Americans approached, but he was too weak to reach for the sidearm beside him. Red kicked the weapon away and knelt before the dying man. Water, Red said, offering his canteen. The soldier hesitated, then took a small sip. His eyes darted nervously past Red, scanning the jungle behind them. English? Red asked. The soldier shook his head weakly. Red tried simple Japanese phrases he'd picked up. Sniper. Where? The dying man's expression changed. Not fear now, but something like awe mixed with terror. He whispered something too soft to hear. What's he saying? Tex asked. Red leaned closer, and the Japanese soldier grabbed his sleeve with surprising strength. His eyes were wide, urgent. Yurei, he whispered. Yurei. What's that mean? Cooper asked. Ghost, Red translated grimly. He's saying ghost. The soldier nodded frantically, then spoke again, longer this time, his words slurring as his strength ebbed. Phantom, Red translated haltingly. The phantom of the forest. With a final, shuddering breath, the Japanese soldier slumped forward, dead. Silence fell over the group. Tex's hand tightened on his rifle. "Just superstition," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. Red stood slowly. "Maybe, or maybe there's something to it." They buried the Japanese soldier in a shallow grave, an act of humanity that seemed increasingly rare in this war, and continued their search as dusk approached. The jungle grew stranger as shadows lengthened, playing tricks on tired eyes. "Should head back," Martinez suggested. Lieutenant Caldwell said to return by dawn. Red was about to agree when he spotted it. A thin column of smoke, barely visible against the darkening sky, rising from a distant ridge. One more stop, he decided. Night had fallen by the time they neared the source of the smoke. Red left the others concealed and moved forward alone, every sense alert for danger. The smoke led to a small clearing where remnants of a fire still glowed faintly. But what drew Red's attention was the careful arrangement around it: stones, placed in a precise pattern, ration tins stacked neatly, a worn cloth spread as if to catch brass casings, the camp of their phantom sniper. But something was wrong. It was too obvious, too exposed for a man who had shown such caution. Red scanned the surroundings, the hairs on his neck rising. This wasn't a camp. It was staged. A decoy. The crack of a rifle shot shattered the night. From the direction where he'd left his team, Red heard a cry of pain. "Ambush!" Tex's voice carried through the darkness. Red sprinted back through the jungle, ducking low as another shot whistled overhead. He found Cooper and Martinez taking cover, behind a fallen log, returning fire blindly into the night. Tex crouched nearby, blood seeping through his fingers where a bullet had grazed his arm. "Where's he shooting from?" Red demanded. "Everywhere." Martinez's voice cracked with fear. "First shot came from the north, second from the east. It's like he's all around us." Red steadied himself, forcing his mind to work through the panic. It was impossible for one man to reposition that quickly in the dark. Unless— "Hold your fire," he ordered. "Save your ammunition." "Are you crazy?" Cooper hissed. "He'll pick us off one by one." "If he wanted us dead, we'd be dead already," Red replied. "He's hurting us." The realization crystallized. Each shot came from a different direction, not because the sniper was superhuman, but because each position had been prepared in advance. The shooter was moving between them in a predetermined pattern, creating the illusion of multiple attackers. "We split up," Red decided. "Each man takes a different route back to camp. He can't track all of us." Tex's eyes widened. "That's suicide." "It's our only chance," Red insisted. "He wants us confused, panicked. We don't give him that." Reluctantly, they agreed to the plan. Red would go last, trying to draw the snipers' attention while the others escaped. As Martinez and Cooper disappeared into the darkness, Red signaled Tex to go next. "Don't do anything stupid," Tex warned. "I ain't writing to your mother explaining how you got yourself killed playing hero." Red managed a tight smile. "Just get back to camp. Tell Caldwell what we found." As Tex melted into the jungle, Red took a deep breath and broke cover, racing in the opposite direction from his men. As expected, a shot followed him, splintering bark inches from his head. He zigzagged through the undergrowth, using every trick he'd learned in years of combat to make himself a difficult target. For what seemed like hours, the deadly game continued. Red would move, a shot would follow, always close enough to threaten, but never finding its mark. The sniper was toying with him, trying to wear him down, force a mistake. Finally, the shots stopped. Red found himself in a small clearing, the moon providing just enough light to see by. Exhaustion weighed on him, but he remained alert, aware that the silence could be another trap. That's when he saw it, a clear footprint in a patch of soft earth. Not the deliberate, misleading mark he'd found before, but a genuine track left by someone in haste. And beside it, a smaller print, too small for an adult. Red knelt, examining the tracks with growing unease. The larger print, a man, moving, fast but with control. The smaller one, a child, he whispered to himself. The implications chilled him more than any ghost story. Not a spectral phantom haunting the jungle, But something perhaps more disturbing. A child working with the sniper. A spotter. A guide. What kind of man would bring a child into war? As Red pondered this discovery, the sensation of being watched intensified. He scanned the surrounding darkness, seeing nothing, yet certain he was not alone. Somewhere in the shadows, eyes tracked his every move, patient, calculating, inhuman in their stillness. For the first time since the war began, Sergeant James Red McCallister felt a flicker of genuine fear. Not of dying, that prospect had become an old companion, but of something he couldn't understand. An enemy who seemed to exist outside the normal rules of warfare. He marked the location of the footprints carefully in his mind and began the long journey back to camp. But with each step the certainty grew. They weren't hunting the phantom anymore. The phantom was hunting them. Dawn broke in fragments through the jungle canopy, painting dappled patterns across the hastily established American camp. Red stood before Lieutenant Caldwell's makeshift command tent, his uniform still damp with morning dew, fatigue etching deep lines around his eyes. Behind him, Tex leaned against a tree trunk, his arm freshly bandaged where the sniper's bullet had grazed him. Small footprints? Caldwell repeated, disbelief evident in his voice. You're telling me our phantom ghost sniper is working with a child? I'm telling you what I saw, sir, Red replied evenly. One set of adult prints, one significantly smaller, and it matches the movement Cooper spotted earlier, too small for a grown man. Caldwell paced the small clearing, frustration radiating from him in waves. First it's a ghost, then it's multiple snipers, now it's some kind of… What? Father-son hunting party picking off my men? I don't know what it is, Red admitted, but I know where those tracks lead and I need to follow them. Caldwell stopped pacing. You just got back. Your men need rest. With respect, sir, we don't have that luxury. The longer we wait, the colder the trail gets. Tex straightened from his position against the tree. I'll go with him. Your arm, Caldwell began. Is fine, Tex interrupted. Just a scratch. The lieutenant studied them both, recognizing the determination in their eyes. Finally, he nodded. Take Martinez. Be back by nightfall or I'm sending in a full squad. That would be a mistake, sir, Red said quietly. A large group would be spotted, a mile away. Nightfall, Sergeant, Caldwell repeated, his tone making it clear the discussion was over. Or I do things my way. An hour later, Red, Tex, and Martinez were back on the trail, following the footprints Red had discovered the previous night. The trail led northeast, away from their previous engagement sites, deeper into territory none of their maps properly documented. You really think it's a kid? Martinez asked as they pushed through a particularly dense stretch of underbrush. Working with a Jap sniper, Red kept his eyes on the ground, reading the subtle signs of passage. Maybe an island child, local, someone who knows the terrain. Still don't make it right, Tex muttered. Using a kid in war. Nothing about war is right, Red replied, his voice flat. We just do what we have to. The trail grew more difficult to follow as the day progressed. Whoever had left those footprints knew how to move without leaving signs. If not for Red's exceptional tracking abilities, they would have lost the trail hours ago. By mid-afternoon, they had entered a region of the jungle none of them recognized. Older growth, the trees massive, and vine-wrapped, the undergrowth sparser beneath the dense canopy. It was cooler here, the air heavy with moisture and the scent of decay. Red halted suddenly, raising his closed fist. 20 yards ahead, a slight depression in the jungle floor caught his attention. Too regular, too geometric to be natural. Cover me, he whispered, then moved forward in a low crouch. The depression turned out to be a concealed entrance, cleverly disguised with woven branches and forest debris. Red brushed away the camouflage to reveal a narrow shaft descending into darkness. A tunnel entrance. Jesus, Tex breathed as he joined Red. Underground network, just like the Viet Minh used against the French. Red nodded grimly. Perfect for moving unseen. Explains how our ghost seems to be everywhere at once. Martinez eyed the dark opening nervously. We going down there? Red was about to respond when a twig snapped in the distance, a sound too deliberate to be accidental. He signaled for silence and they took cover behind nearby trees, scanning the jungle for movement. Nothing. Diversion, Red whispered. He's drawing our attention. As if to confirm his words, another sound came from the opposite direction, the soft rustle of leaves, barely perceptible. Martinez, watch the tunnel, Red ordered. Tex with me. They moved cautiously toward the second sound, weapons ready. The jungle had gone eerily quiet. No bird calls, no insects buzzing. The silence itself was a warning. 20 yards from the tunnel entrance, they found another set of tracks, fresh, heading west. He's running, Tex said. Red studied the sign. Too obvious. These were left for us to find. So it's another trap? Most likely. But maybe we can turn it around. Red surveyed their surroundings, his mind racing ahead of their quarry's intentions. He expects us to follow. Let's surprise him. They hashed out a quick plan. Martinez would remain by the tunnel entrance, visible, apparently examining it. Red and Tex would circle wide, establishing a perimeter around the area where the diversionary sounds had come from. If the sniper was watching, and Red was certain he would see only one man, apparently separated from his team. Bait, Martinez said flatly when Red explained his role. You'll be covered the whole time, Red assured him. First sign of trouble, hit the ground. Reluctantly, Martinez took his position while Red and Tex disappeared into the undergrowth. They moved in wide arcs, using every trick Red had learned in years of jungle fighting to remain unseen. If their phantom truly was a master of deception, they would need to be better. For nearly an hour, nothing happened. Martinez made a show of examining the tunnel entrance, occasionally calling out to companions who weren't there, an act for unseen watchers. Red, concealed in dense foliage, scanned the jungle with practiced patience. The shot, when it came, was from an unexpected direction, north rather than west where the tracks had led. Martinez dropped instantly as the bullet kicked up dirt inches from his position. Tex, stationed to the northeast, swung his rifle toward the source of the shot. Got movement, he called, his voice tight with concentration. Shooter, 10 o'clock. Through the dense vegetation, Red caught a glimpse of motion, a figure moving rapidly away from the sniper's position, small and quick. Without conscious thought, Tex lined up his shot, finger tightening on the trigger. Then he hesitated. The figure darted between trees, and in that brief moment of clear visibility, there was no mistaking it. A child, no more than 12 or 13 years old, moving with the sure-footed speed of someone born to the jungle. Tex lowered his rifle slightly, his face contorted with indecision. Red, he called, voice strained. It's a kid. It's a damn kid. The moment of hesitation cost them. A second shot cracked through the jungle and Tex cried out, dropping to one knee as blood blossomed on his thigh. Shooters repositioned, Martinez shouted, returning fire blindly into the trees. Red sprinted toward Tex, zigzagging to make himself a difficult target. No further shots came as he reached his wounded friend. Through and through, Red assessed quickly, examining the wound. You're lucky. Tex's face was pale with shock and something else. Moral revulsion. Did you see? Christ, Red, it's a child. They're using a child. Stay focused, Red urged, tying a quick field dressing around Tex's thigh. Can you move? Tex nodded grimly. Yeah, but I ain't shooting at no kid. No one's asking you to. Red helped Tex to his feet. Martinez, covering fire, then fall back to our position. As Martinez sprayed a controlled burst into the jungle, Red's mind worked furiously. The sniper had changed tactics, growing bolder. Why? Because they were getting close to something important. The tunnel, perhaps. Or because they'd seen the child and correctly guessed the Americans would hesitate. We need to pull back, Tex urged, leaning heavily on Red's shoulder. Regroup. No. Red's voice was firm. This is our chance. He's shown himself, made a mistake. What mistake? He shot me. But not fatally. Red's eyes narrowed as he scanned the jungle. He had a clean shot at your center mass but went for the leg. He's conserving ammunition, or he didn't want to. Kill you. Martinez joined them, breathing hard. Lost visual on both targets. They're gone. No, Red said quietly. They're watching, waiting for us to make our move. He studied the terrain, mentally mapping the sniper's options. He expects us to retreat now that we're wounded. Which is exactly what we should do, Martinez insisted. Red shook his head. That's what he wants. Every time we've retreated, he's strengthened his position, his eyes fixed on the tunnel entrance. No. We press forward. Force his hand. With a wounded man. Martinez was incredulous. You'll take Tex back to camp, Red decided. I'll continue alone. Tex grabbed Red's arm. That's suicide. Maybe. Or maybe one man can move quietly enough to surprise our ghost. Red checked his sidearm and knife. Get Tex medical attention. Tell Caldwell I'm following the original plan. And what is the original plan? Martinez demanded. Red's face hardened with determination. Finding the sniper's base, ending this hunt one way or another. Telling and preparing this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Despite their protests, Red's mind was made up. He helped Martinez get Tex situated for the journey back, then watched them disappear into the jungle. Only when he was certain they were safely away did he turn his attention back to the tunnel entrance. For several minutes he simply waited, letting the jungle settle back into its natural rhythms. Then, moving with deliberate slowness, he approached the concealed opening. If the sniper was watching, and Red had no doubt he was, this would appear to be the desperate act of a soldier too stubborn to retreat. In reality, it was a calculated risk. Red had noticed something the others had missed, drag marks near the tunnel entrance, as if something heavy had been pulled inside recently. Supplies, perhaps, or a wounded man. As he moved closer to the entrance, Red felt a strange calm settle over him. He was no longer just tracking an enemy, he was trying to understand him. What would he do in the sniper's position? What were his priorities? Protection, Red decided. If the child was important to him, family perhaps, then his tactics would be defensive as much as offensive. He would have escape routes, fallback positions. The tunnel would be part of that system. At the entrance, Red paused, listening intently. No sound came from the darkness below. Carefully he lowered himself into the narrow shaft, feeling his way down with his boots until they touched solid ground. The tunnel was low-ceilinged but relatively spacious. Clearly not a natural formation. Old Japanese military engineering, most likely, part of their defensive preparations earlier in the war. Red clicked on his field torch, keeping the beam directed at the ground to minimize its visibility. The passage extended in two directions, roughly east and west. The floor was packed earth, but here and there Red could make out footprints in softer patches, both the man's and the child's. He chose the eastern branch, moving slowly, every sense alert for traps or signs of recent passage. The air grew cooler and damper as he progressed, the sounds of the jungle fading behind him. For nearly 15 minutes he followed the gradually descending tunnel until it opened into a small chamber. Red froze, his breath catching in his throat. The space had been converted into a living area, a sleeping mat in one corner, a small field stove, carefully organized supplies. But what caught Red's attention were the walls, covered with meticulously drawn maps of the American positions, detailed notes in Japanese, and tally marks that corresponded exactly to the number of casualties their platoon had suffered. This was the Phantom's lair, and judging by the still warm embers in the stove, he had been there recently. Red examined the space carefully, noting details that told their own story. 2 sleeping mats, not one. Rice portioned into 2 bowls. A child's sandal tucked neatly beside a pair of military boots. And something else. A faded photograph secured to the wall with a knife. A Japanese man in military uniform standing proudly, beside a woman holding an infant. Family. The revelation hit Red with unexpected force. Not just a sniper and his spotter, but a father and his child, surviving together in this hell of jungle and war. Before he could process this discovery, AI sound reached him, faint but unmistakable. A groan of pain, quickly stifled. Red extinguished his torch and moved silently toward the western tunnel. The sound had come from deeper within the complex. Someone was hurt, badly enough to make noise despite the danger. Had their earlier exchange of fire scored a hit after all? Red moved more rapidly now, following the tunnel as it curved northward. The groans grew slightly louder, interspersed with what sounded like whispered conversation. Then silence fell, sudden and complete. They had heard him coming. Red pressed himself against the tunnel wall, weighing his options. If the sniper was wounded, this might be their only chance to end the hunt, but rushing in blindly would be suicide. After a moment's consideration, Red made his decision. He pulled a phosphorus grenade from his belt, not to throw, but to use as a distraction. Pulling the pin, he rolled it gently down the tunnel, then immediately began retracing his steps toward the chamber and the eastern exit. The flash and smoke would disorient, but not kill, assuming the sniper was far enough away. More importantly, it would suggest an attack from the western approach while Red circled around to intercept from another angle. As the grenade detonated, filling the tunnel with blinding light and acrid smoke, Red ran. He had studied the tunnel, layout enough to guess its likely configuration. A rough circle with multiple exits to the surface. If he could reach the eastern branch quickly enough, he might cut off his quarry's escape. He emerged from the underground complex through a different opening, this one concealed beneath a fallen log. The jungle air felt shockingly fresh after the close confines of the tunnel. Red oriented himself quickly and began moving toward where he estimated the western exit would be. He had covered perhaps 50 yards when a shot rang out, splintering, bark inches from his head. Red dropped and rolled, coming up behind a massive root system, his own rifle at the ready. No further shots came. The jungle held its breath. Red waited, controlling his breathing, listening for any hint of movement. Nothing. But he knew with bone-deep certainty that he was being watched. "I know you're there," he called out in the few words of Japanese he knew. "Show yourself." Silence answered him. Then, almost imperceptibly, a whisper of cloth against leaves. Someone moving to his right, using the dense undergrowth as cover. Red pivoted smoothly, tracking the sound. Through a gap in the foliage, he caught a brief glimpse, a figure sliding from one tree to another, rifle held ready. The movement was awkward, favoring one side. Wounded, as he'd suspected. Taking careful aim, Red fired, not to kill but to flush his quarry from cover. His shot struck a tree trunk inches from where the figure had been, sending splinters flying. A cry of pain answered him, sharp, involuntary. Then return fire, 3 quick shots that forced Red to duck lower behind his shelter. For several tense minutes, the deadly game continued. Move, counter-move. Neither man able to gain clear advantage. Red had the benefit of better position, but his opponent knew the terrain intimately. It would come down to stamina, to who made the first mistake. Then Red saw his opportunity. The sniper had worked his way toward a dense patch of bamboo. Good cover, but with limited visibility to his flanks. If Red could circle wide enough, moving with the silent precision that had kept him alive through years of jungle fighting, Red began his approach. He used every shadow, every bit of cover, making his way steadily toward his target's exposed side. 20 yards, 15, 10. Red could see him now, a Japanese soldier in a tattered uniform, blood darkening one sleeve, rifle held ready as he scanned the forest in the wrong direction. Even wounded, there was something impressive about his vigilance, his disciplined stillness. Red raised his rifle, centering the sights on the man's back. One shot would end it. The phantom would fall, and his men would be safe. His finger tightened. On the trigger, a twig snapped behind him. Red spun, but too late. Something small and hard struck him in the side of the head, a rock thrown with surprising force. He staggered, momentarily disoriented, and in that crucial second, The sniper turned and fired. White-hot pain lanced through Red's side as the bullet grazed his ribs. He fired back reflexively, the shot going wide. Then he was moving, diving, for cover as more shots followed him. When he reached the shelter of a fallen tree, Red assessed his wound, painful but not serious, the bullet having carved a shallow furrow along his side. But the implications were far more significant than the injury itself. The child had been behind him. While he stalked the sniper, the child had circled around to protect the man. Father and daughter, working in perfect coordination. And Red had almost walked right into their trap. Clutching his bleeding side, Red changed position again, trying to regain the initiative. But the jungle had gone silent. His quarry had vanished, or rather retreated strategically, unwilling to continue the engagement while wounded. For nearly an hour, Red searched, finding only traces, blood droplets on leaves, disturbed earth where someone had moved in haste. The trail led back toward the tunnel system, then vanished completely. As dusk approached, Red finally admitted defeat. For now, his own wound needed attention, and Lieutenant Caldwell would be sending a search party if he didn't return by nightfall. But as he made his way back toward the American camp, Red's mind was working, processing everything he had learned. The phantom sniper was not one man but two, father and child, fighting their own private war. Their discipline, their coordination, their intimate knowledge of the terrain made them formidable beyond their numbers, and now they were wounded. Cornered animals were the most dangerous kind, especially those protecting their young. The hunt had entered a new phase, one where Red would have to match not just the sniper's skill, but his desperation as well. What he hadn't expected was the disquieting sense of respect growing within him for his enemy. This was no faceless Japanese soldier, no fanatic fighting for the emperor. This was a man protecting his child in the only way he knew how. As night fell over the jungle, Red reached the perimeter of the American camp. Behind him, blood dripped steadily from his side, marking his path through the undergrowth. Blood that led in two directions, he realized with sudden clarity. His own, heading toward safety. And somewhere in the darkness, another trail, that of a wounded father and his child running for their lives. "You look like hell, Red." Tex sat propped against a supply crate, his bandaged legs stretched out before him. Despite the pain evident in the tight lines around his eyes, he managed a thin smile as Red entered the medical tent. "Speak for yourself," Red replied, wincing, as the field medic finished dressing the wound on his side. Lieutenant Caldwell stood in the corner, arms crossed, face set in a mask of barely contained frustration. "So our ghost got away. Again." Red pulled his shirt back on carefully. "He's wounded, badly from the amount of blood I saw." "And there's definitely a kid with him?" Martinez asked from his position by the tent flap. "A girl," Red confirmed. "Maybe 12, 13 years old. And she's not just with him, she's working with him. When I had the sniper in my sights, she circled behind me, created a distraction." Caldwell paced the small confines of the tent. "This changes things. Command needs to know what we're dealing with." "We know what we're dealing with," Red said quietly. "A Japanese soldier and his daughter, cut off from their unit, surviving, the only way they can." "They've killed 7 of our men," Caldwell snapped. "And we've killed thousands of theirs." Tex interjected. "It's war, Lieutenant. Ain't nobody's hands clean." Caldwell's jaw tightened. "That's not the point. The point is, we have a mission to complete, and this family operation is standing in our way." "There's something else," Red said. "In their hideout, I found detailed maps of our positions, movement patterns, patrol schedules. He knows our operations better than some of our own men." A heavy silence fell over the tent as the implications sank in. "He's been observing us for weeks," Red continued, "learning our habits, our weaknesses." "Then we changed the pattern," Caldwell decided. "Full patrol, first light. We follow those blood trails while they're still fresh." Red shook his head. "He'll be expecting that. If he's as good as I think he is, he's already relocated, found a new nest." "Then what do you suggest, Sergeant?" Caldwell's voice had taken on a dangerous edge. Red met his gaze steadily. Let me and Tex go, just the two of us, tonight. Your side, the medic began. We'll hold, Red finished firmly. The girl was injured too. I saw her limping when they retreated. They won't have gone far, not with two wounded. Caldwell studied him for a long moment. You're that confident you can find them? Yes, sir. I know how he thinks now. Where he'd go. The lieutenant's eyes narrowed suspiciously. There's something you're not telling me. Red hesitated, then reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded photograph, the one he'd taken from the sniper's hideout. His name is Tanaka, Hajime Tanaka. I found this in his quarters. Caldwell took the weathered photograph. It showed a younger version of the sniper, standing proudly in his Imperial Army uniform beside a beautiful Japanese woman holding an infant. On the back, characters were written in black ink. Can you read it? Caldwell asked. Red shook his head. But the date's clear enough. 1934. That baby would be about the right age now. Tex leaned forward, examining the photo. His wife? Most likely, Red agreed. No sign of her in the tunnels. Probably didn't make it. Caldwell handed the photograph back, his expression unreadable. So our ghost has a name and a face and a daughter to protect. He sighed heavily. Fine. You and Tex have until dawn. But I want this finished, Sergeant. One way or another. Understood, sir. An hour later, Red and Tex were back in the jungle, moving silently through the moonlit darkness. Despite his wounded leg, Tex insisted on coming, partly out of loyalty to Red, partly out of his own need to confront what they were facing. You really think they're still near the tunnels? Tex whispered as they paused to check their bearings. Red nodded. Tanaka's wounded. His daughter, too. The tunnels are his best defense, multiple escape routes, stockpiled supplies, familiar ground. But he knows we found them. He knows I found one entrance. The system looked extensive. Probably has a dozen exit points spread across the jungle. They followed the blood trail for nearly 2 hours, losing it twice when Tanaka had waded through streams to break the trail. But Red's instincts guided them true, and each time they picked up the sign again. A broken stem here, a smudge of blood there. The trail led not back to the tunnel entrance Red had discovered earlier, but to a different part of the jungle entirely. A rocky outcropping where the ground rose sharply in a series of natural terraces. Perfect for a defensive position, with clear sightlines and limited approaches. If I were him, Red murmured, studying the terrain, I'd set up there. He pointed to a narrow ledge halfway up the formation, partly concealed by overhanging vegetation. Tex peered through the darkness. Natural sniper's nest. Exactly, but he wouldn't stay there. Too obvious. He'd have a fallback position. Red's eyes traced the ridgeline. Somewhere up top, with an escape route down the other side. So we circle around, come at him from behind. Red considered this, then shook his head. He'd expect that. No, we split up. You work your way up the south face, slowly, making enough noise for him to track your movement. I'll find another way up. Tex frowned. Using me as bait? Using his expectations against him, Red corrected. He knows I'd never launch a frontal assault, so that's exactly what will make him think you're doing while I find his daughter. His daughter? Red's face was grim in the moonlight. She's injured, hiding somewhere while her father keeps watch. If I can find her... Jesus, Red, Tex breathed. You'd use a child as leverage? To end this without any more bloodshed? Yes. Red checked his sidearm. But I won't hurt her, that's not who we are. Tex didn't look convinced, but he nodded reluctantly. How do we signal? 3 short whistle bursts if you spot him. 2 if you need backup. They separated, Tex beginning his deliberate, noisy ascent of the southern approach while Red circled wide, searching for a less obvious path. He found it on the eastern side, a series of narrow ledges, nearly invisible, in the shadow of the larger rock formation. Red began climbing, every sense alert for traps or signs of passage. The blood trail had ended at the base of the outcropping, but fresh scrapes on the rock face told him someone had climbed this way recently. Halfway up, Red paused, listening intently. From somewhere above came a soft sound. Not the shifting of rocks or wind through leaves, but something distinctly human. A suppressed cough, quickly stifled. Moving with increased caution, Red continued his ascent. The ledge widened into a small plateau, and there, tucked into a natural hollow in the rock face, he saw a darker shadow. The entrance to a cave. Red approached silently, his rifle ready. The cough came again, followed by a whispered voice. Young girls speaking rapid Japanese. There was fear in that voice and pain. Drawing a deep breath, Red stepped into the cave entrance. His eyes adjusted slowly to the deeper darkness within. Gradually, shapes resolved. A small fire pit with carefully banked embers, supplies stacked neatly against one wall, and curled in the farthest corner, a thin figure wrapped in a blanket. The girl sensed his presence instantly. She sat up with a startled gasp, reaching for something beside her. A knife, Red realized. "Easy," he said softly, keeping his rifle lowered but ready. "I'm not here to hurt you." In the dim glow of the embers, he could see her clearly now. No, more than 13, with a delicate face that held echoes of the woman in the photograph. Her left ankle was swollen and bruised, wrapped in an improvised bandage. Her eyes, wide with terror and defiance, tracked his every movement. "Emiko," Red said, guessing at her name. "That's your name, isn't it?" Her expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes, surprised that he knew who she was. Red set his rifle down carefully, a gesture of trust, though his hand remained near his sidearm. He spoke slowly, using the few Japanese phrases he knew. "Father, where?" The girl's face hardened, her grip tightening on the knife. She remained silent. Switching back to English, Red tried again. "I know you understand me. Most Japanese children learn English in school." He gestured to her ankle. "You're hurt. I can help." "American," she spat, her accent thick but the word clear enough. "Kill Japanese. Kill all." "Not all," Red replied, calmly. "Not you. Not your father if he surrenders." She laughed, a bitter sound from one so young. "Lie. American lie." Red considered his next words carefully. "Your father, Tanaka. He's a good soldier, a good shot." Pride flickered across her face before she could hide it. "Best sniper, Japanese army. And you help him." Red continued, taking a small step closer. "You're his eyes, his spotter." She said nothing, but her silence was confirmation enough. "How long have you been out here? Since the Japanese retreat last year?" Again, no response, but Red could read the answer in her eyes. "A long time. Too long for a child to live in such conditions." Red tried a different approach. He reached slowly into his pocket and withdrew the photograph he'd taken from the tunnel hideout. "Your mother?" he asked, holding it where she could see. Emiko's composure broke for just an instant, a flash of grief crossing her face before she shuddered her emotions again. "Dead," she said flatly. "American bombs. Manila." Red felt the weight of her words. How many orphans had this war created? How many families destroyed? He tucked the photograph away, recognizing it had touched a raw nerve. "Your father is wounded," he said gently. "Badly, from what I saw. He needs medical attention." "Japanese medicine," she insisted. "We have. Not enough. Not for a bullet wound." For the first time, uncertainty crept into her expression. Red pressed his advantage. "He sent you here to hide while he leads us away, didn't he? Drawing us from your position?" Her eyes widened slightly. Red had guessed correctly. "He's sacrificing himself for you," Red continued. "But it doesn't have to be that way. This war is almost over, Emiko. Japan is losing. You know that, don't you?" She looked away, and in that small gesture, Red saw the truth. She did know. Whatever propaganda her father might still believe, this girl had seen enough to understand their reality. Red took another step closer. "Help me find him. Help me convince him to surrender. You'll both be treated as prisoners of war, protected, fed, given medical care. No. The word burst from her with unexpected force. Father, never surrender, rather die. And leave you alone? Her face crumpled momentarily, genuine fear breaking through her stoic mask. Father, come back. Always come back. Not this time, Red said quietly. He's too badly wounded and my men, they're hunting him now. It was a half-truth. Only Tex was out there, but Emiko didn't need to know that. As if on cue, 3 short whistle bursts cut through the night, Tex's signal that he'd spotted their quarry. Emiko's head snapped toward the sound, recognition and dread flooding her features. That's them now, Red said, pressing his advantage. Your father is surrounded. Panic flashed in her eyes. She lunged suddenly, not at Red, but toward the cave entrance. Despite her injured ankle, she moved with surprising speed. Red intercepted her, catching her arm as she tried to push past him. Emiko, stop, you can't help him like this. She fought like a wild animal, slashing with her knife, landing a shallow cut across Red's forearm before he could disarm her. Still she struggled, kicking and scratching, her desperate cries echoing off the cave walls. Father, Father. Red restrained her as gently as he could, mindful of her injuries. Listen to me, he urged. If you run out there, you'll both die. Is that what he wants? For all his sacrifice to be for nothing? Gradually, her struggles weakened, replaced by quiet, broken sobs. Please, she whispered. Please no kill father. The naked anguish in her voice struck Red to his core. This wasn't the stoic Japanese soldier's daughter anymore, just a terrified child about to lose the only parent she had left. I promise you, Red said, his voice gentle but firm. I'll do everything I can to bring him in alive. But you have to trust me. For a long moment she was silent, her thin shoulders shaking with suppressed emotion. Then, almost imperceptibly, she nodded. Where would he go? Red asked quietly. His fallback position. Where? Emiko hesitated, torn between loyalty and fear. Ridge, she finally whispered. West Ridge, cave behind waterfall. Red nodded. He knew the spot. They'd passed it on their initial reconnaissance of the area. A perfect defensive position, nearly invisible from below. Stay here, he instructed her. I'll come back for you, I promise. She looked up at him, eyes glistening, with tears and distrust. Why help? Why not kill? It was a fair question, one that made Red pause. Finally, he answered truthfully. Because enough people have died in this war. Because you deserve better than this. And because your father, for all he's done, was just protecting what he loves. He gathered his rifle and moved to the cave entrance. I'll send my friend to watch over you. Don't run. Trust me. As Red slipped back into the night, Emiko's voice followed him, soft but clear. Father, never trust American. I know, Red replied. But maybe he'll trust a father. He descended the rocky path quickly, finding Tex waiting at the base of the outcropping. I saw him, Tex reported breathlessly. Western Ridge, moving fast despite the wound. He's making for higher ground. The waterfall cave, Red confirmed. His daughter told me. She's up there. He gestured to the cave he'd just left. Injured ankle, scared out of her mind. Stay with her. Tex blinked in surprise. You found her, and she talked? She wants her father to live. That's all that matters to her. Red checked his ammunition. I'm going after him, alone. Red, he's cornered now, wounded and desperate. That makes him more dangerous than ever. I know. Red's face was grim in the moonlight, but I gave her my word that I'd try to bring him in alive. Tex studied him for a long moment. You respect him, don't you? This ghost who's been killing our boys? I understand him, Red corrected. There's a difference. As Tex made his way up to guard Emiko, Red turned toward the western ridge. Dawn was still hours away, but the night seemed to be holding its breath, as if the jungle itself were waiting for the final confrontation between hunter and hunted. Red moved through the darkness with renewed purpose. What had begun as a military operation, a simple tracking mission, had transformed into something far more personal. He wasn't just pursuing an enemy sniper anymore. He was pursuing a father who had done what any father would do, protect his child at any cost. And somewhere ahead that father waited, wounded but unbowed, prepared to make his final stand. The waterfall shimmered in the moonlight, a silver curtain concealing the cave entrance Emiko had described. Red approached cautiously, scanning the ridge above for any sign of movement. If Tanaka had made it here, he would have the high ground, the defensive position, every advantage except physical condition. Red knew he should wait for reinforcements, for the full platoon that Caldwell would send at dawn. But something told him that delay would only end in bloodshed. Tanaka, cornered and with his daughter in enemy hands, would fight to the death. There had to be another way. Taking a deep breath, Red made his decision. He set down his rifle, keeping only his sidearm, and stepped into the open, hands raised. "Tanaka," he called out, using the man's name deliberately. "I know you're there. I know about Emiko." Silence answered him, broken only by the steady rush of the waterfall. "Your daughter is safe," Red continued. "She told me where to find you. She wants you to live." Still nothing, but Red's instincts told him Tanaka was listening, watching from somewhere in the darkness. "My name is Sergeant James McCallister. I have your photograph, your wife, your daughter when she was a baby." It was a calculated risk, mentioning the family's most personal possession. "I know why you fight, I understand." For a long, tense moment the night remained still. Then, barely audible above the waterfall, came a voice, hoarse, accented but clear. "If you understand, American, you know I cannot surrender." Red turned toward the sound, pinpointing it to a ledge above the waterfall. "The war is over for you, Tanaka. Japan is losing. Emiko knows it, even if you don't." A bitter laugh echoed from the darkness. "And if I surrender? What then? Camps? Execution?" "Prisoner of war," Red answered firmly. "Medical treatment, food, safety for your daughter." Pretty words. The voice was closer now, though Red still couldn't see its source. "Empty promises. I gave Emiko my word," Red said simply. "I promised her I'd bring you back alive." Silence fell again, heavier this time. Then from behind a rocky outcropping a figure emerged, Hajime Tanaka, sniper of the Imperial Japanese Army, the ghost who had terrorized Red's platoon for weeks. Even wounded, supporting himself against the rock face, there was an undeniable dignity to him. His uniform was tattered but clean, his bearing military straight despite the pain evident in the tight lines around his mouth. Blood had soaked through a makeshift bandage on his arm, and more stained his side where Red's bullet had found its mark. "You are the tracker," Tanaka stated. It wasn't a question. "The one who found our tunnels." Red nodded. "And you're the phantom who's been picking off my men one by one." A flicker of something, pride perhaps, crossed Tanaka's face. "War is not personal, American. I did my duty, as you do yours." "It became personal when you involved your daughter," Red replied evenly. Tanaka's expression hardened. "I did not. Choose this. When Manila fell, when my wife died in your bombing raids, what choice did I have? Leave Emiko to die? The jungle was our only chance. And you've survived this long. That's impressive." Red kept his voice calm, respectful. "But it's over now. Your daughter needs medical attention, so do you. To become prisoners? To live in shame?" Tanaka shook his head slowly. "Better to die with honor." "Is that what Emiko wants? To be an orphan in a war zone?" The barb struck home. Pain that had nothing to do with his physical wounds crossed Tanaka's face. "Where is she?" he demanded. "Safe. My partner is watching over her." Red took a careful step forward. "She's scared, Tanaka. Terrified that she's going to lose you too." For the first time, the Japanese sniper's composure cracked, revealing the father beneath the soldier. "She is all I have left," he whispered. "Then live for her," Red urged. "The war is over for you, but your life, her life, doesn't have to be." Tanaka stood motionless, conflict raging behind his eyes. Red could almost see the battle within him, the Imperial soldier's code of honor against a father's love for his child. "How can I trust you?" Tanaka asked finally. "How do I know this is not a trick to capture me, to use me?" Red holstered his sidearm and spread his empty hands. "Because I could have killed you already, because I left my rifle behind, and because I'm a father too." This last statement was a lie. Red had no children. But in that moment he felt the weight of responsibility that Tanaka carried, the desperate need to protect, to preserve what you love at any cost. For a long moment, Tanaka stood frozen in indecision. Then slowly he lowered his rifle. "If Emiko is harmed," he began. "She won't be," Red promised. "You have my word." As the first hints of dawn lightened the eastern sky, two enemies, now reluctant allies in the cause of survival, made their way down from the ridge. Tanaka leaned heavily on Red's shoulder, his strength rapidly failing as blood loss and exhaustion took their toll. But he walked as a warrior still, head high, eyes clear, not defeated, but choosing a different path, not for himself, but for the daughter who waited. And Red, supporting his former enemy, felt the strange weight of responsibility settle upon him. He had given his word, to Emiko, to Tanaka, to himself. Now he would have to honor it, even if it meant standing against Lieutenant Caldwell, against the simpler narrative of war, where enemies remained enemies, and the only good Japanese soldier was a dead one. The Phantom had a face now, a name, a daughter, a humanity that could not be denied. The real battle, Red realized, was just beginning. Absolutely not. Lieutenant Caldwell's voice cut through the pre-dawn air like a blade. "This isn't a negotiation, Sergeant. It's a war." Red stood his ground, acutely aware of the eyes watching him. Not just his fellow soldiers, but Emiko's as well. The girl sat huddled beneath a blanket near the medical tent, her dark eyes never leaving the confrontation unfolding before her. "With respect, sir," Red replied evenly. Tanaka surrendered. "He came in willingly on my word that he and his daughter would be treated as prisoners of war." "Your word?" Caldwell's laugh was brittle. "Since when does a sergeant make promises on behalf of the United States Army?" He gestured toward the medical tent where Tanaka lay, his wounds being treated by their reluctant medic. "That man killed 7 of our soldiers. He's not a prisoner. He's a war criminal." Tex stepped forward, his injured leg stiff but bearing his weight. "Sir, Red's right. We gave our word. And I'm overriding it." Caldwell's face was flushed with anger. "As soon as that Jap can walk, he's being transferred to intelligence for interrogation. The girl goes to a civilian camp." Red felt a cold stillness settle over him. He had promised Tanaka they would stay together, that Emiko would remain under his protection. "Lieutenant, splitting them up would violate—" "I don't care what it violates," Caldwell snapped. "This is my command, Sergeant, not yours." The lieutenant stalked away, leaving Red and Tex standing in troubled silence. Around them, the camp stirred to life as dawn broke through the jungle canopy. "He can't do this," Tex muttered. "He can," Red replied grimly. "And he will, unless—" "Unless what?" Red didn't answer immediately. His eyes were fixed on Emiko, who watched them with a mixture of fear and defiance. He had made a promise, not just to Tanaka, but to himself. There were lines in war that shouldn't be crossed, and separating a wounded father from his child felt like one of them. "We need time," he said finally. "Time to make Caldwell understand what's at stake here." "And how do we get that?" Tex asked. Red's face hardened with resolve. "By finding a better solution." Throughout the morning, Red divided his attention between checking on Tanaka's condition and keeping Emiko calm. The girl had retreated into wary silence, answering direct questions with the briefest responses, her eyes constantly darting to the medical tent where her father lay. By midday, the camp was buzzing with news. A supply convoy would arrive within 48 hours, and with it, orders for their platoon to move north toward the Japanese stronghold near Baguio. Tanaka and Emiko would be transferred then, separated as Caldwell had decreed. Red had run out of time. As afternoon shadows lengthened across the camp, he sought out Tex. "I need your help," he said quietly. Tex studied his friend's face. "Whatever. You're planning, Red, it's going to be trouble." "Probably," Red admitted, "but it's the right thing to do." Tex sighed. "What do you need?" "Create a distraction. Something to draw attention away from the medical tent at dusk. Nothing dangerous, just noisy. And then I talk to Tanaka. Make him understand what's coming." Tex's eyes widened slightly. "You're thinking of helping them escape." It wasn't a question, and Red didn't deny it. "I gave my word, Tex. That still means something, even in war." For a long moment, Tex was silent, weighing loyalty against duty. Finally, he nodded. "Dusk. It is. But Red, be careful. Caldwell's watching you." As the day's heat began to wane, Red made his way to where Emiko sat, still wrapped in her blanket despite the humidity. He crouched beside her, speaking softly. "Your father's wounds are being treated. He'll recover." She gave no response, but he could feel her attention sharpen. "Emiko," he continued, choosing his words carefully. "When the convoy arrives tomorrow, they plan to separate you, send you to different places." Fear flashed in her eyes, the first real emotion she'd shown since arriving at the camp. "I promised that wouldn't happen," Red assured her, "and I intend to keep that promise." She studied, his face searching for deception. "Why help?" she asked finally. "Why risk?" It was the same question she'd asked in the cave, and Red still didn't have a perfect answer. "Because it's the right thing to do," he said simply. "Be ready at dusk. Stay close to the medical tent." As he walked away, Red felt Emiko's eyes on his back, not trusting yet, but perhaps willing to hope. The sun was setting, painting the jungle in deep amber hues, when Tex created his distraction. A controlled explosion from the ammunition dump, minor enough to cause alarm but not destruction. As predicted, most of the camp's attention immediately focused there, allowing Red to slip into the medical tent unnoticed. Tanaka lay on a cot in the rear of the tent, his wounds professionally dressed, his face pale but composed. His eyes opened, at Red's approach instantly alert despite his weakened condition. "Sergeant McCallister," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Have you come to tell me my fate?" Red glanced over his shoulder, ensuring they were alone. "Your fate is your own, Tanaka. But you need to know. Lieutenant Caldwell plans to separate you from Emiko when the convoy arrives tomorrow. Send her to a civilian camp. You to intelligence." Tanaka's face remained impassive, but his hands clenched into fists at his sides. "You promised." "I know. That's why I'm here." Red leaned closer. "If you can walk, there's a chance. Tonight. Low security on the eastern perimeter during the midnight watch change." Understanding dawned in Tanaka's eyes. "You would help us escape." "I would keep my word," Red corrected. "But you need to understand, if you're recaptured, I can't protect you. And the jungle is crawling with American patrols right now." Tanaka's gaze was steady. "You have a suggestion?" "Head east, toward the coast. Avoid major trails. There are fishing villages where sympathizers might help you find passage to islands that haven't fallen yet." For a long moment, Tanaka was silent, weighing his options. Then he nodded slightly. "What about the guard?" "I'll handle it," Red promised. "Just be ready." As Red turned to leave, Tanaka's voice stopped him. "Why risk this for enemies, Sergeant?" Red looked back at the wounded man. "Maybe I'm tired of making enemies, Tanaka. Maybe we both are." Outside, Red found Emiko waiting exactly where he'd instructed, her small face solemn in the gathering darkness. "Your father will be ready tonight," he told her softly. "When I come for you, you must move quickly and silently. Understand?" She nodded, and for the first time, Red saw something beyond fear or defiance in her eyes, a tentative trust. As Red walked away, a voice spoke from the shadows behind him. "Making friends with the enemy, Sergeant?" Red turned slowly to find Lieutenant Caldwell watching him, his expression unreadable in the half-light. "Just checking on the prisoners, sir," Red replied evenly. The girl was asking about her father. Caldwell stepped closer. "I've been watching you, McCallister. Your concern for these two goes beyond military courtesy. They surrendered in good faith, sir." "They surrendered because they had no choice," Caldwell countered. "Don't mistake desperation for honor." Red kept his face carefully neutral. "Is there something specific you need, Lieutenant?" Caldwell's eyes narrowed. "Just making sure we understand each other, Sergeant. Those prisoners are valuable intelligence assets. I've stationed additional guards around the medical tent and ordered hourly checks on both the man and the girl." The implication was clear. Caldwell suspected something. Red felt his plans crumbling but betrayed nothing. "Understood, sir. Good precaution." "Isn't it?" Caldwell's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Oh, and Sergeant, you've been relieved of watch duty tonight. Get some rest. You'll need it for tomorrow's transfer." As Caldwell walked away, Red stood motionless, mind racing. The lieutenant had outmaneuvered him, effectively cutting off any chance of helping Tanaka and Emiko escape. Unless Red found Tex cleaning his rifle by the supply tent. "We have a problem," he murmured, explaining Caldwell's suspicions and the increased security. Tex whistled softly. "He's got you boxed in, Red. Maybe it's best to let this one go." "I can't." Red's voice was firm. "Not without trying one more play." "What are you thinking?" "A different kind of escape," Red said slowly. "One Caldwell won't expect." As darkness settled fully over the camp, Red sought out Emiko once more. She sat now near one of the cooking fires, still under guard, but allowed limited movement within the camp perimeter. "Plans have changed," he told her quietly as he knelt beside her, pretending to adjust the blanket around her shoulders. "Too many guards. We need a different approach." Disappointment and fear flickered across her face. "Father?" "Still coming with you," Red assured her. "But we need a distraction bigger than anything we could create." He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a bare whisper. "We let your father create it." Red explained his new plan quickly. Tanaka would fake a medical emergency during the pre-dawn hours, something to draw the medic and guards into the tent. In the confusion, Red would help Emiko slip away into the jungle. With the guards focused on recapturing her, Red would then help Tanaka escape in the opposite direction. They would rendezvous at dawn at the waterfall cave, the last place anyone would expect them to return to. "Tell your father when you see him," Red instructed. "And be ready. One chance only." Emiko nodded, her face solemn with understanding. "If trap?" Red met her gaze steadily. "No trap, my word." As he walked away, Red felt the weight of what he was planning. Helping prisoners escape in wartime, the punishment could be severe. But the alternative, breaking his promise, allowing a father and daughter to be separated possibly forever, was something he couldn't accept. The hours crept by with agonizing slowness. Red lay on his bedroll, fully dressed, waiting for the camp to settle into the deep stillness of night. Across from him, Tex watched with knowing eyes but said nothing. Shortly before 3 a.m, the shout came, "Medic, quickly!" The prisoner. Red was on his feet instantly, moving toward the commotion with purposeful strides. The camp erupted into controlled chaos as guards converged on the medical tent, where Tanaka was reportedly convulsing, foaming at the mouth. In the confusion, Red slipped to where Emiko was being kept. Her guard had left his post to assist with the emergency, leaving her momentarily unattended. "Now," Red whispered, taking her hand. Quickly and quietly. They moved through the shadows at the edge of camp, Red guiding her with gentle pressure on her shoulder. They had almost reached the tree line when a shout went up behind them. "The girl, she's missing!" Red cursed under his breath. They'd been discovered too soon. "Run," he urged Emiko, pointing her toward a dense patch of undergrowth. "Keep going east, don't stop, your father will find you." She hesitated, eyes wide with uncertainty. "Go," Red insisted. "I'll help your father. Trust me." With one last look, Emiko disappeared into the darkness, her small form swallowed by the jungle. Red turned back toward the camp, mind racing. The plan was unraveling. He needed to reach Tanaka. Before, Sergeant McCallister. Lieutenant Caldwell stood 10 paces away, his sidearm leveled at Red's chest. Behind him, 2 soldiers emerged from the shadows, rifles ready. "Step away from the trees, Sergeant," Caldwell ordered, his voice cold. "Hands where I can see them." Red complied slowly, mind racing for a way out. "Sir, I can explain. Save it." Caldwell's expression was hard with contempt. "I knew you'd try something. Just didn't think you'd betray your own men for the enemy." "They're not the enemy anymore," Red argued. "They're a father and daughter trying to survive. They're Japanese," Caldwell's voice rose sharply. "The same Japanese who bombed Pearl Harbor, who tortured our boys on Bataan, and you're helping them escape." Before Red could respond, another shout came from the direction of the medical tent. "Lieutenant, the prisoner's gone!" Caldwell's face contorted with fury. "Find him, now!" He turned, back to Red, his weapon unwavering. "You've made your choice, Sergeant. When this is over, you'll face a court-martial for treason." A crack of gunfire from the jungle edge interrupted them. A single shot, precise and deadly. One of the soldiers beside Caldwell crumpled, blood blossoming across his chest. "Sniper!" Caldwell shouted, diving for cover. In the momentary chaos, Red made his decision. He lunged forward, tackling the lieutenant around the waist, sending them both crashing to the ground. Caldwell's pistol discharged harmlessly into the air as they grappled in the dirt. Another shot rang out from the jungle, dropping the second soldier. The camp erupted with return fire, muzzle flashes illuminating the night like lightning. Red broke free from Caldwell, rolling to his feet and sprinting for the tree line. Bullets kicked up dirt around him, but none found their mark. In seconds, he had vanished into the darkness beyond the camp's perimeter. The jungle closed around him like a living entity, branches whipping at his face as he ran blindly through the undergrowth. Behind him, shouts and gunfire continued, Caldwell organizing a pursuit. Red moved with the instincts of a veteran scout, using the terrain to his advantage, doubling back across his own trail to confuse followers. Only when he was certain he'd lost any immediate pursuit did he pause to catch his breath and orient himself. Tanaka had escaped. The shots from the jungle edge proved that. But how had the wounded man recovered enough strength to not only flee, but also provide covering fire? And where was he now? Red began moving eastward, following the route he'd instructed Emiko to take. If his guess was correct, Tanaka would be tracking his daughter, trying to rendezvous with her before heading for the coast. The night was fully dark, clouds obscuring the moon and stars, making navigation treacherous. Red moved carefully, every sense alert for signs of pursuit from behind or Tanaka's passage ahead. An hour into his search, Red froze at a soft sound from his right, the deliberate snap of a twig. A signal, not an accident. "Tanaka?" he called softly. Silence answered him. Red took a cautious step toward the sound. "I know it's you." Emiko went east, as planned. From the darkness, a voice finally responded, weak but determined. "Why follow? Sergeant, your duty is to your men." "My duty is to my word," Red replied simply. "You need help reaching Emiko." A figure emerged from the shadows. Tanaka, leaning heavily against a tree trunk, his bandages dark with fresh blood. The effort of escape and the covering shots had clearly drained what little strength he had recovered. "The girl is clever," Tanaka said, pride evident even through his exhaustion. "She will hide her trail." "Not from me," Red countered. "And not from Caldwell's men when they pick up the search at dawn." Tanaka studied him in the darkness. "You risk much, American." "We both do." Red approached slowly, offering his shoulder for support. "Can you walk?" Tanaka hesitated, then nodded once, accepting the assistance with silent dignity. Together, they began moving through the jungle, Red tracking Emiko's sign with practiced ease despite the darkness. Dawn was breaking, pale light filtering through the canopy, when Red spotted the first clear indication of Emiko's passage, a broken fern. recently crushed. He was about to point it out to Tanaka when the Japanese man suddenly stiffened. "Listen," Tanaka whispered. Red went still, straining his ears. Distant but clear came the sound of men moving through the jungle, Caldwell's search party, and closer than expected. "They're tracking us," Red muttered. "We need to move faster." Tanaka shook his head. "You go. Find Emiko. I will lead them away." "You're in no condition." "It is my choice," Tanaka interrupted firmly. "My daughter's safety for my life. A fair exchange." Red recognized the resolve in the other man's eyes, the same unflinching determination that had made him such a formidable enemy. "There has to be another way." "There is not." Tanaka straightened, as much as his wounded body allowed. "Find her, keep your promise." Before Red could argue further, Tanaka had slipped away into the undergrowth, moving with surprising stealth despite his injuries. Red stood frozen in indecision. His promise had been to keep them together, to ensure both survived. But Tanaka had made his choice, a father's choice, Emiko's life above his own. With a quiet curse, Red continued eastward, following Emiko's trail. The girl had done well, using streams to break her sign, doubling back on her path. But to Red's trained eye, the signs were clear enough. She was heading for the rendezvous point at the waterfall cave. The distant crackle of gunfire froze Red in mid-stride. Brief but intense, a firefight somewhere behind him. Tanaka, drawing the search party away, making his final stand. Red forced himself to continue. If Tanaka's sacrifice was to mean anything, he had to reach Emiko first. The mist grew thicker, as morning advanced, shrouding the jungle in ghostly veils. Red moved quickly but cautiously, aware that Caldwell would have split his forces, sending men to likely escape routes. The waterfall came into view through the mist, its cascading waters, creating a constant white noise that masked other sounds. Red approached carefully, scanning for any sign of Emiko or American patrols. Movement caught his eye, a small figure slipping from behind the falls, heading toward a clump of dense vegetation. Emiko, searching for a better hiding place. Red was about to call out when instinct made him drop to the ground instead. A heartbeat later, a shot cracked through the mist, splintering bark where his head had been. Caldwell. The lieutenant stood on a ridge 30 yards away, rifle raised, face twisted with grim satisfaction. "I knew you'd lead us to them, Sergeant," he called. "Predictable right to the end." Red rolled into the cover of a fallen log, mind racing. Caldwell had outmaneuvered him, anticipating his move to the rendezvous point. But where were his men? As if reading his thoughts, Caldwell laughed. "Just us, McCallister. The others are dealing with our Japanese friend. What's left of him? I wanted you for myself." Cold dread settled in Red's stomach. Tanaka's diversion had failed, or worse. "The girl has nowhere to run," Caldwell continued, moving laterally to get a better angle. "Seems fitting, doesn't it? The ghost and his helper, hunted down just like they hunted our men." "She's a child, Lieutenant," Red shouted back. "This isn't what we do." "This is war. We kill the enemy before they kill us." Red risked a glance toward where he'd seen Emiko. She had frozen in place, partially concealed by ferns, but completely exposed if Caldwell shifted his position slightly. "It's over, McCallister," Caldwell called. "Come out now and I'll consider a more lenient court-martial." Red's mind worked furiously. He needed to draw Caldwell's attention away from Emiko's position. Give her a chance to reach better cover. "You've lost perspective, Lieutenant," Red replied, deliberately raising his voice. "We're supposed to be the good guys." Good? Evil? Those are luxuries for people who didn't watch their friends die in this godforsaken jungle. Caldwell's voice had taken on a manic edge. "That sniper killed 7 of my men. 7. And you helped him escape." "He surrendered," Red countered, slipping sideways behind his cover, trying to work his way closer to Emiko. "And he's probably dead now anyway. Isn't that enough?" "Not until it's finished. All of it." Red saw his opening. Caldwell had shifted position, momentarily looking away from where Emiko hid. With hand signals he hoped she would understand. Red directed her toward a denser patch of undergrowth closer to the waterfall. She hesitated, then began inching backward, keeping low to the ground. "You know what your problem is, Lieutenant?" Red called, deliberately baiting him. "You've forgotten who we're fighting for, not just against." "Spare me your philosophy, Sergeant," Caldwell snapped. "You betrayed your unit, your country." "I kept my word," Red fired back. "Something that used to matter in the U.S. Army." He saw Emiko reach the edge of the waterfall path. Just a few more seconds, and she could slip behind the curtain of water, into the cave beyond. Caldwell seemed to sense something was wrong. He scanned the area where Emiko had been, his rifle swinging in that direction. Red made his decision in an instant. He broke from cover, sprinting toward a new position, deliberately exposing himself. As expected, Caldwell's attention and aim shifted to follow him. The lieutenant's shot kicked up dirt at Red's heels as he dove behind a massive tree root. The distraction worked. Emiko disappeared behind the waterfall. But now Red was pinned, down caught in a deadly game of cat and mouse with a man who had nothing left to lose. "It's just you and me now, Sergeant," Caldwell called, moving to circle Red's position. "Nowhere left to run." Red measured his options. The lieutenant was right. He was cut off from any line of retreat. His only chance was to somehow disarm Caldwell without killing him. Despite everything, he couldn't bring himself to fire on a fellow American officer. The mist grew thicker around them, reducing visibility to mere yards. Red used it to his advantage, moving silently from one cover to the next, working his way gradually toward Caldwell's last known position. He had nearly reached it when a soft sound from behind made him whirl. Tanaka stood there, a ghostly figure, in the mist, blood-soaked and swaying on his feet but very much alive. In his hands he held his sniper rifle with unwavering steadiness. "You survived," Red whispered, shock evident in his voice. "Barely." Tanaka's face was deathly pale, his breathing labored. "Emiko?" "Safe." Behind the falls, relief passed across Tanaka's face like a shadow. "Good. Now move aside, Sergeant." Red realized with a jolt what Tanaka intended. "Wait. He will kill you," Tanaka stated simply. "Then hunt Emiko. I cannot allow this." Before Red could respond, Caldwell's voice cut through the mist. "McCallister. Last chance." Red made his decision in that moment, a choice between betraying his uniform or betraying his humanity. "Lieutenant," he called back, "it's over. Tanaka's here. He's armed. Stand down and we all walk away from this." Caldwell's laugh was harsh. "You expect me to believe that? The man could barely stand in the medical tent." "It's true, sir. Think about it. Why would I lie when I'm at your mercy?" There was a long pause, then, "Prove it. Both of you step into the clearing. Hands up." Red looked at Tanaka, whose face remained impassive. After a moment, the Japanese sniper nodded slightly. Together, they stepped from cover into a small open space between the trees, Red with his hands raised, Tanaka still holding his rifle but pointed at the ground. For a moment the tableau held. 3 men caught in the final act of a drama that had played out across the jungle for weeks. "Drop the weapon, Tanaka," Caldwell ordered, stepping partially from cover, his own rifle trained on the Japanese sniper's chest. Tanaka remained motionless, eyes fixed on Caldwell with calm intensity. "My daughter. Where is she?" "Safe," Caldwell replied with a cold smile. "For now, drop the rifle." Red saw the minute shift in Tanaka's stance, the decision being made. "Tanaka, don't." Too late. In one fluid motion, impossibly fast for his wounded state, Tanaka raised his rifle and fired. Caldwell, anticipating the move, had already squeezed his own trigger. The shots cracked through the mist, almost simultaneously. Red watched in horror as both men staggered. Caldwell dropped to one knee, blood blossoming from his shoulder where Tanaka's bullet had struck. But Tanaka had taken the worse hit. Caldwell's shot had found his chest, a mortal wound. The Japanese sniper sank slowly to his knees, rifle slipping from suddenly nerveless fingers. Red was at his side in an instant, catching him before he could collapse completely. "Emiko," Tanaka whispered, blood bubbling at his lips. "Promise. Keep safe." "I promise," Red vowed, supporting the dying man's weight. "She'll live, Tanaka. I swear it. A ghost of a smile touched Tanaka's lips. Then his eyes fixed on something beyond Red's shoulder. Emiko, he breathed. Red turned to see the girl standing at the edge of the clearing, horror etched on her young face as she took in the scene before her, her father dying, Caldwell wounded but still dangerous. "No!" she cried, starting forward. "Stay back!" Red shouted, but she was already running toward her father. Caldwell, wounded but still conscious, raised his rifle again. Red saw the movement and lunged, tackling the lieutenant before he could. "Take aim at the girl." They wrestled briefly, but Red's desperation gave him the advantage. He wrenched the rifle from Caldwell's grasp and tossed it aside. "It's over," Red panted. "No more killing." Caldwell sagged against a tree trunk, the fight gone out of him as blood loss took its toll. "You'll hang for this, McCallister," he muttered, but the threat sounded hollow even to his own ears. Red turned back to where Emiko had reached her father. She knelt beside him, small hands pressed futilely against his chest wound, tears streaming down her face as she whispered urgently in Japanese. Tanaka's eyes were growing dim, but his hand reached up to touch his daughter's cheek with infinite tenderness. He spoke to her softly, words Red couldn't understand but whose meaning was unmistakable. A father's last gift to his child. Then Hajime Tanaka, the phantom sniper who had terrorized the jungle, looked once more at Red. "Your promise," he whispered. "I'll keep it," Red assured him. "She'll be safe." Tanaka nodded faintly, a soldier acknowledging a final order. Then his hand fell away from Emiko's face, and the light faded from his eyes. Emiko's wail of grief echoed through the misty clearing, a sound so raw and primal it seemed to silence the jungle itself. She collapsed across her father's body, shoulders shaking with uncontrollable sobs. Red stood motionless, the weight of all that had happened pressing down upon him. In that moment of perfect clarity, he understood what Tanaka had known all along. That, in war there are no true victories, only survivors. And sometimes the greatest act of courage is not in how you fight, but in how you choose to end the fighting. From the direction of the American camp came voices, the search party, drawn by the sound of gunfire. Soon they would arrive, and choices would have to be made that would determine not just Red's fate but Emiko's as well. Caldwell, pale from blood loss but still conscious, looked up at Red. "What now, Sergeant?" he asked, voice stripped of its earlier fury, leaving only exhaustion. Red looked from him to Emiko, still clinging to her father's body, then to the approaching voices. His path was clear, though the cost would be high. "Now," he said quietly, "I keep my promise." The search party broke through the underbrush, rifles raised, faces taut with the tension of men expecting combat. Instead, they found a tableau of aftermath. Lieutenant Caldwell slumped against a tree, clutching his wounded shoulder. Sergeant McCallister standing motionless in the center of the clearing, and a small Japanese girl kneeling beside the body of a man in a blood-stained Imperial Army uniform. "Secure the area," shouted Martinez, the senior corporal leading the group. The men spread out automatically, though it was clear the fighting had ended. Martinez approached Red cautiously. "Sergeant, what happened here?" Before Red could answer, Caldwell's voice cut through the clearing, weaker than before but still carrying the authority of command. "The sniper ambushed us," he said, gesturing toward Tanaka's body. "Would have killed me if McCallister hadn't intervened." Red turned to the lieutenant, surprise momentarily overriding his stoic expression. This wasn't the account he'd expected Caldwell to give. Caldwell met his gaze steadily, something unspoken passing between them. Whatever his faults, the lieutenant wasn't ready to admit how close he'd come to shooting a child in cold blood. "Get the lieutenant back to camp," Red ordered, his voice returning to its practiced calm. "He needs medical attention." Two soldiers moved to help Caldwell to his feet. As they supported him past Red, the lieutenant paused. "The girl," he said quietly for Red's ears alone. "She can't stay here." Red understood the implication. Despite Caldwell's unexpected restraint in recounting the events, his position on Emiko remained unchanged. She was the enemy, a potential threat to be eliminated. "I'll handle it, sir," Red replied, his face giving nothing away. Caldwell studied him for a long moment, then nodded once. "Make it clean, Sergeant. No loose ends." As the men carried Caldwell away, Red turned back to where Emiko still huddled over her father's body. She hadn't moved, hadn't acknowledged the Americans surrounding her. Her entire world had narrowed to the still form beneath her small hands. Martinez shifted uncomfortably beside Red. "Orders, Sarge." "Clear the area," Red said firmly. "Give me 10 minutes, but the girl is my responsibility," Red cut him off. 10 minutes, then we all head back to camp." Reluctantly, Martinez ordered the men to establish a perimeter at a distance from the clearing. Soon, only Red and Emiko remained near Tanaka's body. Red approached slowly, acutely aware that to Emiko, he represented everything that had taken her father from her. He crouched a few feet away, not wanting to intrude on her grief, but needing her to acknowledge his presence. "Emiko," he said gently. She didn't look up. Her tears had stopped, replaced by a stillness that was somehow more heart-rending. Her fingers were entwined with her father's as if by holding tight enough, she could keep him from leaving her. "Emiko," Red tried again. "I'm sorry, but we need to go." This time she raised her head. The look in her eyes nearly stopped Red's heart. Not grief, not fear, but a hatred so pure and cold it seemed impossible in one so young. "You promised," she whispered, her voice raw from crying. "You promised he'd live." Red had no answer for that. His promise had been broken the moment Tanaka raised his rifle against Caldwell. But explaining the complexities of war and choice to a child who had just lost everything seemed both impossible and cruel. Instead, he extended his hand. "Come with me." She flinched away from his touch. "Leave me." "I can't do that." "Why?" The single word contained a universe of bitterness. "To kill, like father?" Red shook his head slowly. "No, Emiko. Not to kill you. Never that." Confusion flickered across her face, momentarily displacing the hatred. "Lieutenant say I enemy." "Lieutenant Caldwell says a lot of things," Red replied steadily. "But not all of them are right." He reached into his pack and withdrew a canteen and a ration packet. Setting them on the ground between them, he continued, "I made a promise to your father to keep you safe. I intend to keep it." Emiko's gaze darted between Red's face and the supplies. How? It was a good question. One Red had been wrestling with since Tanaka's final moments. The official protocols were clear. Enemy combatants, even children, were to be detained. Emiko would be sent to a civilian internment camp at best. At worst, if Caldwell had his way, Red made his decision. "Listen carefully," he said, leaning closer. "When we go back to camp, I'm going to tell them you escaped. Ran into the jungle when no one was looking." Dawning comprehension spread across Emiko's face. "Let me go?" "Yes," Red confirmed. "But not yet. Not here. It's too dangerous with so many patrols in the area." He gestured toward the supply convoy that would be arriving. "Tomorrow, when we break camp, that's your chance. Head east, toward the coast like I told your father. There are villages there, people who might help you." Disbelief warred with desperate hope in Emiko's expression. "Why help me? I help kill your men." Red considered this, searching for an answer she might understand. "Because enough people have died in this war," he said finally. "Because your father would want you to live. And because sometimes the right thing to do isn't in any field manual." Martinez's voice called from the edge of the clearing. 5 minutes, Sarge." Red nodded acknowledgement, then turned back to Emiko. "Can you walk? We need to make it look real." Slowly, reluctantly, Emiko released her father's hand and rose to her feet. Beneath the grief and hatred, Red caught a glimpse of the same indomitable spirit that had allowed her to survive this long in a war-torn jungle. "Take these," he said, pushing the canteen and rations toward her. "Hide them. You'll need them later." As Emiko tucked the supplies into her tattered clothing, Red reached for Tanaka's body. "We'll bring him back for proper burial," he told her. "He fought bravely. He deserves that much." Something shifted in Emiko's expression. Not forgiveness. Never that. But perhaps a reluctant recognition that not all enemies were the same. They walked back to the waiting soldiers, Emiko a pace behind Red, her face once again an impassive mask. Two men had fashioned a makeshift stretcher for Tanaka's body. As they lifted the fallen sniper, Red noticed Emiko's hands clench into fists at her sides, but she made no sound. The journey back to camp was conducted in somber silence. The men, who had spent weeks fearing the phantom sniper, now found themselves oddly subdued by the sight of his lifeless body. Death had a way of stripping away the labels of enemy and ally, leaving only the stark reality of a life ended. Tex was waiting. When they reached the perimeter, his injured leg propped up as he sat on a supply crate, his expression darkened at the sight of Tanaka's body, then shifted to confusion when he spotted Emiko trailing behind. "Red," he called softly as the sergeant passed. "What's happening?" Red paused, allowing the others to continue ahead. "Tanaka's dead. Caldwell's wounded but stable." Tex's eyes moved to Emiko, who stood a few paces away, her gaze fixed on her father's body as it was carried toward the center of camp. "And her?" Red glanced around to ensure they wouldn't be overheard. "She escapes tonight. That's the story." Understanding dawned immediately in Tex's eyes. "Caldwell won't like that." "Caldwell gave the order himself," Red replied, his voice neutral. "No loose ends." Tex studied his friend's face, reading between the lines. "I see." He shifted his gaze to Emiko. "Poor kid. What chance does she have out there alone? Better than she'd have in one of our camps?" Red answered grimly. "If she's half as resourceful as her father, she'll find a way." As night fell over the camp, a steady rain began to patter against the canvas tents. Red sat outside the medical tent where both Tanaka's body and the wounded Caldwell had been taken. Emiko had been placed under guard nearby, though the men treated her more with awkward pity than hostility, now that the fearsome phantom sniper had been revealed as a desperate father protecting his child. Lieutenant Caldwell had been sedated after the field medic removed the bullet from his shoulder. He would survive, likely to be evacuated with tomorrow's convoy for more comprehensive treatment at a field hospital. Red had yet to confront him about his unexpected account of the confrontation, but suspected it had less to do with protecting Red and more to do with preserving his own reputation. A lieutenant bested by an enemy sniper was one thing. A lieutenant who nearly executed a child was something else entirely. Tex limped over to join Red, offering him a cigarette. "What's the word? We still moving out tomorrow?" Red nodded, taking the cigarette gratefully. "Convoy arrives at 900. We break camp by noon. And our ghost? Burial detail at dawn. No ceremony, but we do it right." Tex exhaled a cloud of smoke that mingled with the falling rain. "And when they find out the girl is gone?" "They won't," Red said quietly. "Not until we're well away from here." They smoked in silence for a moment, each lost in his own thoughts. "You ever think about after, Red?" Tex asked finally. "After this war's over?" Red considered the question. In truth, he'd spent so long fighting that peace seemed like a distant dream, nearly unimaginable. "Sometimes," he admitted. "Not often." "I think about it more these days," Tex continued. "Watching that little girl lose everything makes a man wonder what it's all for, you know?" "I know," Red replied simply. Tex stubbed out his cigarette against the wet earth. "Whatever happens tomorrow, you did right by them, Red. Maybe that's all any of us can hope for in this mess, to do right when it counts." With that, he limped away, leaving Red alone with his thoughts as the rain continued to fall, washing away the blood and grime of battle but not the memories. Dawn broke gray and misty, the rain having stopped sometime in the night. Red was already awake, had been for hours finalizing his plan. The burial detail for Tanaka was handled with quiet efficiency. No disrespect, but no ceremony either. Just men doing a necessary task. Emiko watched from a distance, her face carefully blank as her father's body was laid to rest in the soft earth of the jungle he had haunted for so long. Red had allowed her this final farewell, against the better judgment of the guards who worried she might attempt to flee. But Emiko made no such move. She merely stood, straight-backed and still, until the last shovelful of earth covered the grave. Then she turned away, returning to her place by the supply tent without prompting. Red approached her there, kneeling to meet her eyes. "Remember what I told you," he said softly. "East toward the coast. When the confusion starts with the convoy's arrival, that's your chance." Emiko regarded him with that disconcerting directness. "If I go, they know you let me." Red shook his head. "Not if we do this right, trust me." A ghost of a bitter smile touched her lips. "Trust American who kill father? Trust the man who's trying to keep his promise," Red corrected gently. Something shifted in her expression. Resignation, perhaps, or the first tentative acceptance that her survival now depended on this enemy soldier's word. "When?" she asked. Simply. "An hour after the convoy arrives. There's a blind spot in the sentry rotation on the eastern perimeter. 30 seconds to reach the tree line. Then run and don't look back." Emiko nodded once, a soldier receiving a mission briefing. The resemblance to her father in that moment was stark and painful. Red placed a folded map beside her, crude but accurate, marking the safest route toward the coastal villages. "Take this. Hide it now." As she tucked the map into her clothing, Red hesitated, then added, "One more thing." From his pocket, he withdrew the photograph he'd taken from Tanaka's hideout, the family portrait from happier times. "This belongs to you." Emiko's composure broke for just an instant as she reached for the photograph with trembling fingers. She stared at the image of her parents, her infant self cradled in her mother's arms, then carefully tucked it away with the map. "Why?" she asked quietly. "Why help me?" Red had asked himself the same question repeatedly through the long night. "Because war makes us do terrible things," he answered finally. "But it doesn't have to make us become terrible people." Before she could respond, shouts rang out from the camp perimeter. The supply convoy had been spotted, approaching from the south. Red stood quickly, resuming the proper distance between prisoner and guard. "Remember," he said, his voice returning to its sergeant's authority. 1 hour, eastern perimeter. The convoy's arrival transformed the camp into a hive of activity. Fresh supplies were unloaded, wounded men prepared for evacuation, new orders delivered. In the controlled chaos, Red kept a careful eye on both Emiko and the camp's perimeter, waiting for the right moment. Lieutenant Caldwell was loaded onto a medical transport, his wounded shoulder bandaged, but his authority undiminished. He beckoned Red over as the medics prepared to move him. "Sergeant McCallister," he said, his voice low but clear. "The girl?" Red met his gaze steadily. "Being handled, sir, as ordered." Caldwell studied him, searching for any sign of deception. Finding none, he nodded slightly. "Good. See that it's done before the convoy departs." "Yes, sir." As Caldwell was carried away, Red felt the weight of what was to come. In less than an hour, he would directly disobey a superior officer's implied order. The consequences, if discovered, would be severe. But as he watched Emiko sitting quietly by the supply tent, her small face solemn and her eyes haunted by awe, she had witnessed, Red knew with bone-deep certainty that his course was set. Exactly 1 hour after the convoy's arrival, a commotion erupted on the western edge of camp. 2 transport trucks had collided during a turning maneuver, drawing the attention of nearly everyone. It was the diversion Red had arranged with Tex, who now supervised the accident with exaggerated frustration. Red moved quickly to where Emiko waited. "Now," he said simply, leading her toward the eastern perimeter where the sentry rotation would leave a brief gap. They reached the edge of camp without incident. Beyond the cleared area, the jungle waited, dark, dense, and unknown. For a child alone, it would be both sanctuary and danger. 30 seconds once you cross that line, Red reminded her, pointing to where the camp's makeshift boundary met the tree line. Run straight for half a mile, then turn northeast. Follow the map after that. Emiko nodded, her eyes focused on the path ahead. Then she turned to Red one last time. My father, she said, her voice barely audible. He was good man, not monster. No, Red replied softly. He was a soldier doing what he believed was right, protecting what he loved. There's no shame in that. Something passed between them in that moment. Not forgiveness, but perhaps understanding. Two lives caught in the machinery of war, each doing what they must to survive. Go, Red urged, as the sentry at the far end of the perimeter turned away. Now. Without another word, Emiko slipped past the boundary and into the jungle, her small form swallowed almost immediately by the dense vegetation. Red watched the spot where she had disappeared for several heartbeats, then turned and walked calmly back toward the center of camp. It was done. 20 minutes later, the alarm was raised. The Japanese prisoner was missing. Red organized search, parties with convincing urgency, dispatching men in all directions while secretly ensuring that the eastern sector received the least thorough examination. She couldn't have gotten far, Martinez insisted as they regrouped after the initial search. Not on foot, not with that injured ankle. You'd be surprised what people can do when their lives depend on it, Red replied. But you're right. We'll find her. Only Tex, watching from the sidelines, caught the subtle emphasis in Red's voice. Find her, not catch her. He gave Red an almost imperceptible nod of understanding. As evening approached, Red called off the search. We've got our orders, he announced to the assembled men. We move out at first light tomorrow. The girl is one casualty we'll have to accept. Later, as the camp settled into its final night in this blood-soaked patch of jungle, Red stood at the edge of the perimeter, gazing eastward. Somewhere out there, Emiko was making her way through the darkness, carrying her father's photograph and the burden of everything she had witnessed. Red found himself hoping that she would survive, that she would somehow find her way to safety, to some semblance of a normal life after all this was over. It seemed a fragile hope, but it was all he had to offer. Tex joined him, passing over a mug of strong coffee. Think she made it? I think she's got a fighter's chance, Red replied. Her father taught her well. They stood in companionable silence for a moment, two soldiers contemplating the strange turns of war that had brought them to this point. You know, Tex said finally, when this all started, I thought we were hunting a ghost. Turns out we were hunting a man. Just a man trying to protect his own. Aren't we all? Red asked quietly. The question hung in the air between them, unanswerable. Dawn. The platoon broke camp, preparing to move north toward their next objective, their next battle. Red supervised the loading of supplies with his usual efficiency, but his thoughts remained with a small figure moving eastward through the jungle. Before leaving, he made one final visit to Tanaka's grave, unmarked save for a small cairn of stones he had assembled in the pre-dawn light. No words were spoken, none were necessary. Soldier to soldier, hunter to hunted, there was a kind of respect that transcended the artificial boundaries of war. As the platoon filed out of the clearing that had been their home and battleground for these past weeks, Red took one last look around. The jungle was already reclaiming the space, erasing the signs of human passage. Soon there would be nothing left to mark what had happened here. No evidence of the phantom sniper who had terrorized them. No trace of the desperate father who had fought to protect his child. No sign of the choices that had tested a veteran sergeant's understanding of duty and honor. The mist closed in behind them as they marched away, shrouding the clearing in its ghostly embrace. The war moved on, relentless and uncaring. But for Sergeant James "Red" McCallister, something fundamental had shifted. A recognition that even in the midst of humanity's darkest hour, there remained the possibility of mercy, of choice, of a different legacy than the one written in blood and battle. Somewhere in the vast Pacific theater, the fighting continued. But in this small corner of Luzon, one child had been spared. One promise had been kept. One cycle of vengeance had been broken. And perhaps in a war where victories were measured in territory gained and enemies killed, that small act of humanity was the only true victory that mattered. Up next, we have two more incredible stories that are waiting for you. Just click the image you want to watch and it will take you there. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe. It would mean a lot.